Hello, welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. My name is Marc Sabatella. I'm the Director of Education for MuseScore, and this is my weekly series of chats where I pick a subject relating to MuseScore and making music and talk about it. So as usual, I need to make sure that I'm hearing audio. um, so I will actually rely on you guys to tell me if you can hear me or not. So I'm going to assume y'all can hear me. I actually do have a new microphone I want to test today, but I'm not using it at the moment, but I was messing with things, so that's why I feel like I should make sure that I'm audible. So I'm just going to keep talking and hope that someone says something soon. Okay, so the subject that I wanted to talk about today is time, specifically time signatures, but beyond that, just the general idea of time. And since I'm not seeing any comments, I feel like I can see that I'm broadcasting, but I feel like I need to once again just do another check. So I don't know why sometimes I see, sorry about this, guys. Sometimes I can see the cafe show up, and sometimes I just don't. Okay, good morning. All right, good. Hi. We are live. Yay. All right. So subject is time and time signatures and subjects relating to this. And as always, I will take, whatever questions y'all have, whether it's on this subject or not. But feel free to, go think outside the box and, um, come up with questions that have to do with time, even if they weren't first and foremost on your mind going into this. So, some of the things that I want to just talk about. Well, first of all, let's just talk about what a time signature is. I mean, it's there to tell you, as the reader of the music, how many beats are in every measure. The assumption is that music is organized in measures or bars, if you're in Great Britain, uh, of the same duration, the same number of beats. And much music is organized that way. Although, interestingly enough, it wasn't originally that way. I mean, that idea of repeating rhythmic patterns is, I don't know how old, but a lot of music, through the Middle Ages was not organized that way. But by the time we hit the late Renaissance and all, it's much more common. Um, but it's also true that a lot of modern music is not in any particular time signature, especially, if we think of modern classical music, modern jazz, other things like that. Certainly pop music and so forth is usually pretty regular. But that's one of the things that I want to be talking about, is how to create music with basically no time signature, but also just other aspects of this. So I'm just going to show a few things here and there that relate to this. So when you go to create a score, I'll call it time, and I'm going to use a grand staff because I want to show one thing relating to, remind me if I don't think of it already, I want to talk about local time signatures. So I'll pick a key and I'll just go with key of C, and here's where you would pick your time signature. Now, you can pick a time signature here, how many beats you want, and then whether you want it to be over 4 or 8 or 16 or 2 or what you want it to be. So 4/4 is kind of the default time signature, but you can change it at any time. You can also make it display using the common time symbol, or you can make it be cut time, which of course is really 2/2. And I'm assuming that you all know basically about time signatures. I just want to show some things here. But 2/2 means 2 half notes in a measure, which is kind of the same as 4 quarter notes. It's just you might feel it differently in some vague, unspecified way. I'm just going to go ahead and put in some time signature here. I'm just going to make it be 5/4 because why not? This is, if you have an unusual time signature, you can pretty much enter it how you want here, 7/8 or whatever, even if it's not on the palette. But then often people wonder, well, then how can I, if I need 7/8 later, or I think 7/8 is on the palette, but if I need 11/4 or something later, how do I do it? So I want to show that too. If you have a pickup measure, here's where you'd get to pick it. And so maybe you have 3/8 as your pickup, and you're wondering how to do that. Well, you literally make it be 3/8. And now you got your 3/8 pickup measure. So here's that 3/8 pickup measure here. The way the rests are shown by default isn't really right. It should be the eighth and then the quarter. That's because MuseScore doesn't really know of this as a pickup measure. It's because if this was somewhere else in the piece, this might be the right way to display it, because maybe this quarter note is beat 1. But in this case, the quarter note is, or the quarter rest is beat, 3.5. So I can enter some, oops, I meant to enter eighth notes on the 4. There we go. So you get that. Now, the other thing you might know is that beaming there's rules for how eighth notes should be beamed that are kind of dependent on what time signature you're in. MuseScore knows the basic rules for 4/4 pretty well, although different editors use different rules, so you can override them. And for 5/4, I have no confidence that it knows anything at all. So I'm going to go to time signature properties. I right-clicked 5/4 to get to time signature properties. As of the most recent updates to MuseScore 3.4, you can now just click the time signature and go to properties. I'm not claiming it's easier, but it makes it maybe more obvious if you didn't think to right-click it, because this is where all the other properties are. But the way you set the beaming is kind of too involved to just use the inspector for. So here you can see the default beaming is set up in 5/4 to beam the first 3 beats together and then the next 2 for eighth notes. It does the same for 16ths, which I think is probably not good. So I'm just going to click where I want to break these beams, because I really want it to beam 16ths beat by beat. I'm kind of okay with how it's doing the 30 seconds, I guess. I don't use 30 seconds enough to care, but just so you can see, if I wanted, let me remember how to do this, drag. It's one of the few things I drag for. That. I think you can also click a note, so that creates this sort of sub-beam this way. I see some more comments. Hi, hello everyone. And so I created this so that you visually can see this grouping, the first 8 30 seconds as one beat, but they're still connected. So the 30 seconds all beam themselves together with 3 beams, but the group of 4 beams with 2 beams, and then I can have a single beam between there and the next grouping. So let's see what happens if I click this guy. I guess, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess drag. I seldom enough deal with these sub-beams that I don't actually remember if there's other things to do other than drag and drop, and I'm learning with you all about that. If someone does this more and knows a different way, but I would hope that there would be some way I could just sort of click the note and then click the palette, but it doesn't seem like anything selects when I do that, so I guess that's not a thing. Yeah, so I have no choice but to use drag and drop for this. So that's good for me to know. Okay, so that's how the 16ths, the 30 seconds, will be beamed in that group. I could do the same thing here, but I don't actually care, so I'm not going to. I could then decide, well, maybe I don't want these eighth notes here, in this case, all beamed together, so I can break the beam individually, because group of 3 eighth notes only isn't good to beam together, because you might think it's a triplet. So I can come down here to beam properties and apply the start of beam here. And so I selected the D and then applied start of beam. So beaming kind of is associated with time signatures in that way. But you can override it. So now let's say we need to change time signature somewhere. We want to change to, well, let's see what's on the palette here. So I can change to 7/8, and I can, as always, I can use drag and drop, or I can just select a measure and click the 7/8. Or if I just have this passage here, these bars here that I want to be 6/4, I can select them, press 6/4, and it automatically inserts a 6/4 there and a 7/8 at the end. So if you know you just want to change for some period of time and then go back, you can do that. Now, if you need, like say I mentioned 11/4, if I want an 11/4 bar, there's no 11/4 on the palette. And even if I click more here, you're going to see, no, there's no more. So I say, all right, that's fine. I'm going to create time signature. And is it earlier today? Oh my gosh, daylight savings time. Okay, guys, so I totally spaced that this is the case. It's always the same time for me. It's 10:30. My time, 10:30 a.m. But the problem is that when summer, when daylight savings time or whatever you all call it, I think most countries have some concept of it. That means that the relationship of my time to Greenwich time changes, and therefore you might be seeing at a different time. So I'm sorry, I usually manage to put out a note, a heads up about that. So I see a question coming in. But I will let you finish your question while I finish what I'm doing here. So if I want 11/4, I hit that more and I get to create time signature. I can also just use the keyboard shortcut Shift-T. Either way, it brings up this dialog in which I can create my own time signature. And so if I want 11/4, I can go in here and type 11. 4 is already 4. I can now decide how I want it beamed. Let me expand this dialog so you can actually see the whole thing. I think I can also, there we go. Haha, look at that. Boy, it's a lot of 16ths and 32nds. I don't even know how to deal with that. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to beam this thing as, you can decide how you want it beamed, right? I've got 4 plus 4 plus maybe 4 and then a 3. I'm just making stuff up. And then a 4 and then a 3. I don't know. You decide how you want it beamed. And then when you're done, you say add, and it adds it to the master palette here. And now you can add it to your score. I just clicked it, and you can see that the score kind of updated. Boy, this dialog is, I think somewhere there's a change request out there to put scroll bars on this thing, which I am now very much in favor of. So, and there's my 11/4. So let's see. Question. All right, so 5/8, 7/8, 4/4, etc. Why can't you copy the notes along? Did you maybe mean the other way around? If you copy the notes to copy the time signatures because you want that sequence 5/8, 7/8, 4/4 to keep repeating throughout the piece? Is that what you mean, Jay? Assuming that's what you mean, the answer is there is no way to do that currently. We know it's something that people would like to be able to do, and I am quite sure someday it'll happen. I've looked at the code enough to see, what would be involved in making it happen, and it's not that bad to implement it. It just would take someone to sit down and work on it for, a few days or whatever, and just have that be, they'd have to wrap their brain around a bunch of different things to make it all work, but essentially it would be possible. So right now there's not, I don't have a better answer for you other than to say do it manually, but let's take a look at what doing it manually might mean, because maybe you'll discover an easier way to do this. What happens if I click arrest and then click, so what was it, 5/8? Is 5/8 one of my choices? 5/8 is not one of my choices. All right, so I go ahead and I'll create myself a 5/8. Oh, and I do it this way. Oh, that's nice. The dialog is doesn't bother having all that other stuff. When I actually used the button here rather than Shift-T, it didn't show the rest of the dialog, which is sort of useful. Okay, so I've got a 5. I got an 8. I add. And where did it add it? I'm going to assume it added it to this more over here. Come on, baby. There we are. Oh, I clicked it twice, so I've got 2 of them. I only need 1, so I'll delete that one. So there you go. All right, so I got my 5/8. Let me add it to my palette. So if I click arrest, I think I think I can apply 5/8 that way. Yes. All right. When I do that, I'm now going to hit Alt Right, and it moves to the bar line. Alt Right again, and then what's the next one? 7/8, 7/8. Alt Right, Alt Right, 4/4. Alt Right, Alt Right. So what I could do is I could create myself a custom palette maybe, or just reorder. I don't want to mess up my palette. No, I don't feel like messing up my palette anymore. But I could reorder the palette, right? I could put the 5/8 right next to the 7/8. I can just drag this. Oh, is it double click now? Huh. No, okay, it's just click and hold. So you could put those 3 time signatures right next to each other on the palette, and then that sequence becomes relatively simple matter to reapply. I will also say, if you're if you're familiar with the ABC notation, this is getting a little, well, whatever. There is an ABC import plugin that comes with MuseScore. You just have to enable it through the plugin manager. Through the plugin manager, you would enable it here. But once you've enabled it, ABC is a text-based music language, which is actually a very cool thing. And if you do this enough to care, maybe this is something you'd want to learn how to do. So I'm going to just show you some little bit of magic here. So meter starts as 5/8, and then I'm going to have, I think I need to put in rest. Let me just think about this. I'm just going to put in C, 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 bar line, and then I think I can go M. So I've forgotten too much ABC to be used. So I think the M's have to be at the beginning of a thing. Anyhow, there would be a way to do this, and once you do this text language here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you could then copy and paste this as many times as you want in text, and when you import it, if I got the syntax right, there you go. There's my 5/8, there's my 7/8. So I could do that and create an outline for a score. Obviously, I wouldn't really fill it with C's. I would fill it with rest. Z is the ABC-ism for rest. So it would be possible to set yourself up a template using ABC if you learn just enough of it to be useful, and then import it. So that would be something. Okay, so 3 plus 4 over 8. So now we're getting into some specific kind of complex time signatures, and that's great. So if I want a time signature of 3 plus 4 over 8, right now we don't have a great way to do exactly that. We sort of do, though. So this is, actually that one is more doable than some. Let me show you. So if I go with, if it's 3 plus 4 over 8, it's really 7/8 as far as what it is internally. So here in the value section, you enter what it really is, 7/8. But here you enter how you want it to look, 3 plus 4 over 8. So that one you can do quite directly. What you can't do as directly is, what if it was meant to be, well, yeah, you could do other things down here too, right? So if you want there to be a plus on the top and the bottom, that's great. But if you wanted 3/8 plus 4/16, that you can't do as directly. You have to do it like this: 3 plus 4, 8 plus 16. But at least 3 plus 4 over 8 is actually quite doable here. You just enter that as the text. In fact, you can do that in the properties even of an existing one. So, I added that to the palette, didn't I? Yes, I just did. You could take an existing time signature like 6/4, and I could go to its properties and do the same thing. Here, I could type 4 plus 2 over 4. So you can take an existing time signature and change how it displays. And notice it really literally only did that one. It didn't even do the one on the other staff. You would have to actually add it. If you add it to your palette and then add that to the score, it'll affect all the staves. But as it is, this allows you to have different appearance for your time signature between staves, which is kind of cool. Another kind of cool thing, I asked people to remind me, now's the time to remind me, I want to talk about local time signatures. This is a thing. So maybe I want 4/4, but I want the left hand to basically have a repeating triplet pattern, and I don't want to have to write out all the triplets, and I really just want it to say 12/8. So I could use that to say, I do that same thing and just change this to be 12, 8. But it's not really 12, 8. I mean, if I start entering eighth notes, you'll see, well, I only got 8 of them, and they're beamed in 4s. It's really still 4, 4. It just says 12, 8. If I wanted real 12, 8 there, I would do something quite different. So let me delete these notes and show you what I'm going to do. Delete them notes. Okay. I am going to enter what's called a local time signature. So a local time signature is done by using control when entering the time signature. So I'm going to hit control. Let me change this back to 4, 4 so that we definitely see it change, and then I'll know if I got it right. So the local time signature feature is there. It works mostly. I'll talk about that in a second. Let me show you how to do it first. I'm going to hit Control and click. Okay, that didn't do it. How about if I click the 4, 4 and Control? Nope, that didn't do it. All right, Control drag. Bear with me. This is a thing. There we go. I had to drag it to the measure. So let me undo all that. Select the measure, Control click. All right, that did it. So there you go. Now I have a 12-8 here, and I think you're going to see, yeah, it's a real honest-to-goodness 12-8 organized that way. And if I type eighth notes in the top, you'll see they kind of space themselves appropriately. So I've got 4 eighth notes here, 12 eighth notes there, and they line up correctly, right? This one lines up with that one. This one lines up with that one. So this all works kind of correctly. You could even do weirder things than that, have 4, 4 here, 5, 4 down there, and have a 4 against 5 rhythm. The bar lines are still going to line up. The length of the measure remains the same, but the subdivision is different. So when I mentioned, thanks. I'm going to come back and talk about the pathétique, but thank you for the comment there. I will say another word about that because it's actually relevant here. So this local time signature feature was developed very early on during when we went from MuseScore 1 to MuseScore 2. So I'm talking 10 years ago when they first started developing some of the new features that were going to be in MuseScore 2. It was actually before MuseScore 1 was even released. They decided, well, let's release MuseScore 1 now, and because MuseScore 2 is going to have all these big changes. And local time signatures was one of them. Local time signatures was implemented so that we could correctly create the Bach-Goldberg variations, because we wanted to produce an open edition of the Goldberg variations. And so there was one of the variations that required this local time signature business. So Werner, the original developer of MuseScore, implemented local time signature just enough to get that to work. And then we all kind of just sort of forgot about it, frankly. Just before MuseScore 2 came out, when it was in beta, people started trying to use it. We discovered all these bugs, and mostly me, went on a bug fixing spree, trying to fix as many bugs in local time signatures as we could, fix as many as we could. The ones we couldn't fix, like copy and paste, produced all sorts of problems. I just disabled it. I just said, well, it's going to be too hard to get copy and paste to work correctly when you have local time signatures happening, so I'm just going to disable it. So a lot of things about local time signatures work, but a lot of things don't work, and a lot of things are just disabled, and so you'll have to just discover. You'll just get an error message. Like if I try to select this and copy it over here, oh, that one works. I guess if you're copying in the same, there you go. If I try to paste from that 4-4 down here, you're just going to get an error message. And often the error messages are not worded correctly because it was even too late to produce new error messages. We had already done all the translations and everything. I mean, I'm literally fixing these bugs like 3 days before the release of MuseScore 2. And this was years ago. So it was too late to add new error messages, so I had to reuse some existing error messages. So a lot of the error messages are a little misleading. And then basically since then, we fixed a few more bugs, but things are still a little limited as far as local time signatures. How do I write and listen to a brass fall? All right. The brass, so a fall, I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to talk about pathétique because why not? A fall, I don't think we have playback for the falls. But if I put in a C, let's go ahead and actually add a brass instrument, because why not? I pressed I, I'll do a trumpet. And let's make it be a high C, because, you know, and I'll make it be a half note instead of that. All right, so the arpeggios and glissandi palette has these different symbols on it. So the main fall is this right here. And so when I enter that, oh, I must be in remember I had Philip Rothman on a little while ago and we were demoing Notation Express. I'm apparently using the Notation Express workspace right now. So let me, that's where I just added those time signatures to. Let me go to just the regular advanced palette, just because he renamed this to G.fall, because in order for his Notation Express to work, it required all of these palette elements to have names that were easy for his Notation Express thing to access. So they all started off with a letter code relating to the name of the palette. So anyhow, normally you'll just see it say fall. So if I play this, I don't think we're going to hear the fall. So, but that's how you would notate it. Now there's also, as you see on the palette, let me just enter a couple more of these things. You'll also see what are called slides, and these aren't intended for guitar really, but you know, it's still a thing here. No playback on that either. But here's a trick you can use if you want the playback to happen. I think this is going to work. Let's find out. I'm going to add a grace note after that C. So I've now added a grace note after. Let me give myself a little more working room here. All right. Oops, I didn't really mean this guy. I meant the other one. So I've added that thing. Let me just make it be 4 measures per line. So now I've got this C here. I've got some space. I'm going to add a glissando from this C to that C, and I'm going to just make it be all the way. Whoops, what did I do? I did something. I hit, I'll select this guy, control down. All right. If I enter a glissando, let's see if this plays. All right. Now all I got to do is take this guy, and I need to make it invisible by pressing V, and I think because I can't really select a grace note normally, I'm just going to have to make the stem, and let me zoom in. I have to make the little pieces of this guy invisible individually. And then, since I don't really want to hear it get played, the last note get played, I'm going to unselect play in the inspector. So now, there you go. So if I unzoom, maybe you can see it do. So there's a way to get a fall using a gliss to an invisible grace note. Now, if you really just wanted the other fall symbol, well, fine. Let's make this guy invisible. Now let's add the fall symbol. And so, you know, there's options there. Yeah, someday we'll probably do some sort of playback for the fall that really does something that, you know, sounds more like a lip type fall, rather than playing a chromatic scale really fast. Okay, so so when the pathétique got mentioned, I appreciate the comments, but let me talk about what's actually relevant to it, and then put in another extra little plug. Last week, you may remember, I talked about ear training and voice leading in particular, and I did this little thing where I took the first few measures here, and oops, let me select them. Oops, that was caps lock. That's the problem. All right. So I click a measure, shift click over here, copy that measure, except I don't really want to copy it all. I only want voice 1. So I'm unselecting voice 2 in the selection filter, which is under view selection filter, or F6. So I've got only voice 1 selected, which is basically the melody. And you know, well, I'll show you why I'm going to do this in a second. If I only want the notes, I can unselect all the slurs and unselect the articulations and text and whatnot and dynamics. Okay, fine. Unselect all that. So now you'll see that the slur is not selected. It's black instead of blue. So the notes are selected, Control C, and this piece, the Pathétique Sonata, is written in 2/4 at so those 16ths are really quite slow. And when I was sort of reconceiving how I wanted to look at this, I really wanted to convert this to 4/4 and convert these quarter notes to half notes. Well, this is related to the subject here. What if you want to do that? Well, check this out. I've just selected this whole thing. I'm now going to go to a fresh score here that's in 4/4. If I just paste it, I'm just going to get the quarter note, dotted quarter note, eighth, 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 dotted quarter. So let me undo that. This time I'm going to say, instead of pasting, I say paste double duration. And it has a shortcut, Control-Shift-W. Look at that now. I got my half notes. So this is also relating to converting time signatures, where you have this ability to cut and paste in a way where it changes the time signature. So I actually took advantage of that and took the entire piece and then created a lead sheet based on it. And it's here. So let me go to MuseScore.com. Oh, yeah. If I go to MuseScore.com and get that score, I'm going to give you the link. So if you guys are subscribing to me, and probably many of you who are watching this are, then you probably already got notification about it. But for everyone's future reference, I'm going to add this. So this is the score, and I will paste that. Oh. Well, I don't have the chat up in here because I've got that on my other computer. What do you know? So let's go. I'll deal with that in a minute. But let me just do this live. If I hit the play on this, I actually recorded it. So let's hear. I'm not going to play the whole thing. So this is a video score. I tried to show a video score a few weeks ago when I was talking about MuseScore.com. So this is my adaptation. So this is my adaptation that I created. Really, I just got kind of slightly obsessed with this because last week I had been using this as an example to talk about voice leading and ear training and so forth. And then I really started thinking more about it and just playing around with it. And I was like, you know what? I am going to just do a whole harmonization of this thing. I just really spent the next couple days working on that. And the piece gets... I stick very close to the piece in a lot of ways, but I don't know. Here's the B section. If you're familiar with the piece, you're going to recognize everything that's in it, but I'm revoicing everything. So it's the same piece, but kind of reimagined some harmonically. So anyhow, I did this because it was a lot of fun, but then I also created an entire tutorial around this, and I'll put that in the comments. created an entire tutorial, and it's like literally it's like an hour-long tutorial. I divided it up into parts, so the first part is up on YouTube, the rest is up on my site, and that's, you know, the sort of teaser to get you to go to my site and sign up for the music master class. But yeah, the first section of it, I go through. The first 20-minute tutorial is me just talking about these first 8 bars, and then again, the next 8 bars is the same melody, and I talk about the reharmonization possibilities. So it was really fascinating for me to do this, and I think some of you will really enjoy that. I mean, if you have this mindset that says, you know what, no one should ever mess with Beethoven, you should just play it exactly as written, I get it, and I'll say that's okay. You don't have to check out what I'm doing. I will say though that compared to a lot of arrangements I've seen where people might just take the theme and then just totally reinvent it, that's not what I'm doing. I'm really honoring so much of what Beethoven had in terms of his harmonies, his voice leading. There's so much of what Beethoven wrote that I'm holding on to and just sort of updating things a little bit in terms of the voicings and how I treat things rhythmically. And it's to me a fascinating subject. What makes this piece this piece? If Beethoven were to write an orchestral arrangement of it, he would have been making different choices also. So I look at that as this. I'm making a different adaptation of the same piece that's more or less the same kind of choices Beethoven would have made if he was making an orchestral version of it. So anyhow, I encourage you all to check that out. And now I do feel like I should just at least, if I put in, where do I need to be? I need to be in the watch live. No, I want to be on the dashboard. If I put it in the comments right, if I put it in the, ooh, it's going to start talking. I don't want that. Let me mute it for a second. So if I take just the score, you can get to everything else you need from there. And then I'll put the rest of the stuff up in comments afterwards. Did I spell pathetique right? Yeah, I don't know how to make the little accent mark easily. I know how to make it, but not make it easily. So, all right. So there's that. All right, so now let's come back to looking at MuseScore and just talking about a few other things relating to time signatures. Let me unmute myself again before I forget. Cool. So if I come back to my score where I was playing around with time, here's my time score. The other thing that I knew I wanted to talk about is the idea of meterless music. So let me just actually create another score for that. I'm just going to make it be just a treble clef, and just take everything else at defaults. What if I want music that's like, say, either Renaissance music that is written without meter, or, you know, some other, you're writing a cadenza, maybe. Maybe you have a piece that's in 4/4. Oh, for that matter, look at Pathetique. This little passage here, right where I stopped it on the video. So let me go back to the video for a second. I took a ton of liberties with that time-wise. Beethoven wrote it out with 30-second notes here. And remember, because these used to be 30 seconds, now they're sixteenths. And therefore, it all added up, other than these three. These three were 30-second grace notes. And I suppose, yeah, or were they 64th grace notes in the original, perhaps, even? They might have, what were they originally? I don't know if that pace double actually does grace notes the way one might expect. I implemented that pace double, but did I think about grace notes? Apparently not. So I wrote them so I didn't double the length of those 30-second grace notes, but that's fine. I think that's just as well. There's any number of pieces, though, that have a cadenza of more duration than you would actually be able to notate this way. Like the first movement of this has this big long chromatic scale that you could notate as 128th notes in 7 tuplets or whatever you'd need to do to make it work. But realistically, you just want to stuff a measure full of notes. So if I just want to stuff a measure full of notes in 4/4, let's take a look at that. What if I want to have like 90 16th notes in here? Well, I can start entering some 16ths. And at some point, I get to the end of the measure, and I'm like, oh no, I'm out of notes. Oops, I pressed V. So what I can do is I can use an insert command. If I use Control-Shift-C, well, I'll use Control-Shift-G. See, it inserted a G. A, B, C. So I'm holding Control and Shift while I'm typing my notes, and it's just inserting them. There's also an insert mode. If I use the drop down here to insert mode, there it is. Sorry. Now I can just type notes. And I think, insert mode also lets you do clicking, and it lets you use the piano keyboard, etc. So insert mode would be a way to create this really long measure like this. Notice that now we get a little plus sign that displays above the measure. That lets you know it's got too many beats in it, and that's fine. It's just there to let you know that that's the case. If you don't want to see those little plus signs, you can make them go away with show mark irregular measures. Actually, that makes that marking go away. But I'm going to want to keep it so we can really understand what we're doing here. So that is a way of creating like just one cadenza. You could have made those. Oh, what if I wanted those? I'm like, oh, I wish I'd done those all as 30 seconds. That's okay. No problem. Let me cut. And now I'm going to paste half duration, which is Control-Shift-Q. How do I know Q and W? Q and W commands in node entry mode will half or double the duration of the most recent note. I'll show you that in a second. So Control-Shift-Q is the paste. Now I got 30-second notes. Oh, but now I've got this rest I don't need anymore. That's fine. I select it, Control-Delete, and it's gone. It pulls that entire rest out of the measure. In fact, I can delete ranges of notes too. Like I'm like, oh, I didn't mean those notes. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I can just Control-Delete, and you'll see those notes go away. Boom, they're gone. So now there's a minus sign here. This is telling me now there's actually not enough beats in this measure. Which is okay. That's good. It's telling me what it's telling me the truth. So you can add things to measures, delete things from measures like that. You can also combine measures. Like let's say again, this is more about like some Renaissance piece. What did I do? I'm still in note. Let me get out of insert mode here because I don't want to be in insert mode. Weird things might be happening now. So I'm going to select this bar line and hit enter and start working on this line. If I start entering some notes here, say a whole note and then some half notes. Am I still in insert mode? I am still in insert mode. Look at that. So fine, I'm in insert mode. But I just want to show you another way to do the same thing. So this time I'm going to more carefully select step time. That's how you get out of it, step time. So C, and then half notes. I can select these measures. Oops. Select the measures. And then Tools, measure, join. I use this enough because I actually do quite a bit of Renaissance music, because you've seen me when I've showed you some of the accessibility features, and I've had Elizabeth on the show, the blind student that I have. She sings in a Renaissance ensemble, and I've been doing getting some of the music for that ensemble into MuseScore so that she can read it using her screen reader, and a lot of that is meterless music. So I enter music, so I use this join command a lot. So I defined a shortcut for it to be Control-Shift-J for join. The heck? Split? Control-Alt-Shift-J? I don't think so. I thought I had that be something with an S in it. Oh well, whatever. Maybe that's on my other computer. So Control-Shift-J. joins these, and now it's one long measure. So if you're entering any sort of Renaissance music or not hymns per se, but chant-based music, or any kind of modern music that maybe is not in a time signature. I've got some jazz pieces in which I've got sections where I really don't want to deal with time per se. I just it's freer than that, and so I'll just write out the rhythms this way, and maybe I'll write them in 4/4 and then use the join command. Or maybe I will join some measures ahead of time as a quick and easy way of getting myself a big measure that I can then enter notes in. Because if I had entered the notes first, like right now in 4/4, I can't enter a brev, right? If I try to select a double whole note and then type a C, I'm going to get a tie here. Well, I don't want a tie. So really, I need a big enough measure if I'm entering Renaissance music that I can enter brevs without getting ties. So it is somewhat advantageous to kind of create a big measure first and then start entering notes. And then what you could do is make your big measure. So let me make a big measure. Start entering my notes. Let's join them all. Start entering my notes. And then decide, really I want the line to end right at this C, and then start a new line. Well, that's okay. I can start a new measure here. I'm going to use the split command now to say measure, split measure, and it splits the measure right there, and now I can put a line break on it, and now I have another measure that I can start doing the same thing with. So that's how you can create kind of measures with no meter. MuseScore still thinks of this as being in 4/4. It has to have a sense of the measure having a duration, and it will put that plus sign there to tell you no, it's not having the right number of beats in it. By the way, you can also use right-click measure properties on a measure, and you can see right here it's the duration is 8 whole notes. You can just set a specific duration if you know what you want, instead of messing with this insert and joining. But usually it's easier to do the inserting or joining than it is to calculate how many beats you want, unless you happen to know how many beats you want, in which case you can do it this way. So that's this. So also then the measure, maybe if you're writing music that's truly got no time signature to it, let me just delete all this junk here. I really don't want to see that 4/4. Well, I can press V to hide it. Now, when you hide it, given that there's no key signature also, there's an unfortunate thing where the C is now too close to the clef. So let me talk about a couple other options here. Instead of hiding it, I can go to staff properties, and I can say don't show time signatures, because I don't want to see any time signatures in this score. And now this does something a little more reasonable. It's not showing it, and it's putting a more reasonable amount of space. Is it too much space there? Maybe so. So here's something else that I sometimes do is I'll hide the time signature, but what's happening is because we're in C, there's literally no key signature here, and it doesn't really have a concept of how to deal with that. It's a bug, really. But I work around that bug by saying, hey, instead of key of C, let's use the atonal key signature. An atonal key signature means not only is it no sharps or no flats, but it won't even transpose. And it's like, for MuseScore, C major key signature, there is no key signature at all in the internal representation of the score within MuseScore. There's nothing to say there's a key signature here. But if I put in one of these atonal key signatures, now there actually is a representation of a key signature internally there, because it has to know, hey, this is a special key signature, don't transpose it. That's a useful thing to know also. And now we get back to that space where, yeah, there's probably too much space, but at least too much beats too little. Hey, I wonder if I make that one invisible. So I'm going to click the 4/4 and then Alt left. Alt left, normally, let me think. I click the clef, and then Alt right. And then, yeah. So if I'm Alt left and Alt right are the shortcuts to move one note or one element. Like left and right just go note at a time, but they'll skip time signatures and clefs and bar lines. Alt left and Alt right were developed for accessibility reasons, but they're quite useful for other reasons too. So on the C, right now I've got the C selected here, the whole note. Alt-left goes to the time signature and selects it. Alt-left again selects that atonal key signature. Alt-left again selects the clef. So Alt-right, the key signature is now selected, which I would know and you would know if you could see the bottom of my screen. For some reason, my taskbar isn't disappearing. There we go. Key signature, open atonal. So what happens if I make that invisible? I mean, you already can't see it, but that's because there's nothing to see. What if I actually make it invisible by pressing V? Does that change anything? Huh. Yeah, that actually did the job. So, there you go. That's a way of getting the key signature, the time signature to not display, and the first note to display at what's pretty much the correct location. If I then turn off the display of invisible elements so we don't see that distracting grayed out 4/4. All right, so there's a ton to talk about having to do with time and time signatures and meters, and I've talked about quite a bit already. So I don't know if there's any number of other things. People have specific questions. We can look at other topics, but I think I'm probably about wrapping up here. While I'm thinking of it, then, so this video here is when you go to play the score online, you'll hear the video played. But let me put in a link to the tutorial also. So that is something that you will be able to access. And then because I want to put this in the comments, not just in the chat. There we go. If I go to the tutorial, you'll see it's me sitting at the piano talking through what I'm doing in quite some detail. I'm doing the same thing I do here, except I'm doing it at the piano. So if you've seen these cafes, you know how I talk. Hello. To where you can get the sheet music, so you can follow along that way. It's in the key of A flat, right, and it starts with the 1 chord. And so I talk through what's going on. If you skip in ahead a little bit more. Just enough motion to it to feel like something interesting happened. And I was like playing with, well, what could I do to make that feel, if I made it be that, a B flat minor 7 to E flat 7, a 2, 5, it feels very much in the jazz language. So, what I'm doing use of that later on, but again, I want to stick closer to what Beethoven has at the beginning. And okay, so that's the tutorial. I think you'll enjoy that a lot. And I said the what's on YouTube there is it's like 20 minutes long, and it covers the main theme. What I'm doing right now is I'm plugging in my external microphone because I want to see how this is going to work. If anyone's watching and paying attention now, I'm now talking with this microphone I just got, but I haven't done any testing of it here in this room as far as levels. I'm looking, it's got lights on it that shows me levels. In principle, it should sound pretty good right now. Unless it didn't change. That's entirely possible that it's actually, you might not have heard any difference whatsoever just because I plugged it in. I might have to actually change some settings. So I'll find that out when I listen to the playback of this later. We'll see if it changed over automatically or not. Anyhow, I think I will be wrapping up here. And I can tell you that MuseScore 3.5 is going to be like the next. I think it didn't actually select that microphone. I think I have to go into some settings somewhere to get it to start using. I wonder. Properties here, maybe? Default. Microphone Yeti. Let's see about this. Sound any different now? Am I talking? Does it sound any different right now that I changed it here in the settings? That might work. Is it possible to accent the beats instead of accenting the first beat only? So you not automatically, but you can certainly put in any accents you want. If I come back in here, So I can select the notes that I want accented here, and then reopen the inspector, which I had closed before. F8 opens the inspector. Oops, not print screen, F8. And then I can come in here, and where it says velocity, right now the default is that 0 velocity means every note is at its default velocity, meaning whatever the dynamic marking says. But I can increase it. It's on a scale of 1 to 127. This is MIDI speaking. So if I add 30 to the velocity, it's going to come out a little bit louder. So could you hear it? I could, but only barely. So let's just make it crazy louder, 80. So you can do that. So anyhow, I probably sound different now, but I still need to play with settings and placement and all, because I don't know that it's any better by default, and also how it how it's picking up the computer probably isn't working as well. So, the metronome. No, the metronome, there's no way, the metronome doesn't have programmability like that. You would have to basically add yourself you'd have to add a snare drum track or a clave track or whatever you want, and enter just set up one measure the way you want, and then copy and paste it to the rest. And by the way, when I say copy and paste, I mean select this and then just R is make another copy of the thing you just had. So it's press R as many times as you want, fill up the whole score. Or, press R 4 times to fill up 4 measures, then select those 4 measures, press R a few more times, select that, press it a few more times. You can, it's like compounding interest or something. So, so you can create your own metronome. You'd say, well, what if we could add features to give you a programmable metronome, but no matter what we added, someone would say, yeah, but could you also do this? And to my way of thinking, yeah, you already can do that. we have this whole full-featured score editor, so you make that metronome be whatever you want. Admittedly, that's kind of a cop-out, because then if you change it in one place, you're going to have to recopy it everywhere else. So no, I could see that a programmable metronome could be nice, but for now, it is what it is. All right, so I was starting to say MuseScore 3.5 is something that we will be talking about in the near future, where we've been merging a whole lot of changes of new features and bug fixes, not major new features, but little things, and interesting things. And so probably sometime in the near future, I will talk about some of the stuff that you can expect to see in MuseScore 3.5, because I think we're going to do a beta release for it, but I don't know if that's going to happen by next week. So again, feel free to give me some comments. I've got some ideas already for topics for the next few weeks. I will see people next week, hopefully, and go ahead and check out those videos. I think you will enjoy them if you haven't checked them out already, and I'll post some more information in the comments here. All right, thanks a lot, everyone, and see you next time. Bye.